Hello and welcome to the sixth video in this Jira administration video tutorial series. In the first video we covered what is Jira, why use Jira, and how to set up your free 30-day on-demand Jira trial from the Atlassian website. Secondly, we covered how to set up your Jira environment, so the top-level system settings available to Jira administrators. Thirdly, we looked at how to set up a project using all of the system defaults, and I talked you through how to create an issue and also the screen behind the scenes in the administrative backend. And then we transitioned through the issue as a user, and I showed you the workflow, the default workflow, and how that related to what the user saw. In the fourth video, we actually went through and set up bespoke issue types, bespoke custom fields, and custom screens. Okay. In the fifth video, we went through and set up users, groups, notifications, and permissions. So notification schemes and permission schemes, which the last two are at a project level, right? Okay, and in this final video, setting up a custom workflow, we're going to do just that. Before we get started though, what you need to be aware of with workflows is the following. There are essentially two key terms: steps, which are resting points for tickets such as open, or in progress, or resolved, or closed. Okay, so these are places where the ticket can be at. We also have things called transitions, so these are the routes between the steps. So from open to in progress you could have start progress, and from in progress to resolved you could have resolve issue, and from resolved to close you could have close issue. You could also have open to closed, for example, using the close issue transition. Okay, great. So what we're going to do is have a little look at the default workflow that gets shipped with Jira, and also, depending on your version, the builds workflow, which is also available in some instances of Jira. Thereafter, we're going to go ahead and create our own workflow. So let's start by looking at the Jira default workflow. So we click on View and open link in new window. Okay, and you'll see you get two basic views. There's a diagram view, and if you recall this, the PowerPoint presentation or LibreOffice presentation, there are various different steps starting from open, in progress, resolved, closed, and reopened. And within that you can see your transitions. So you have things like start progress, stop progress, close issue, resolve issue, so from in progress to resolved, and close issue, and so on. Yep. So that's a very simple workflow, and we're going to create one very similar to this very shortly. But first, let's have a look at the other one that comes bundled with some editions of Jira. Okay. So in this particular one, you can see we have open, building. I'm not sure exactly which route these take, but I think it's open, building, possibly in progress, or build broken, resolved, reopened, closed, and so on. And what you can see again is the arrows represent the transitions between the steps. Okay, so that's very straightforward and simple. I tend to start with the diagram, and then I tend to refine in the text mode. Okay, so that's what we're going to do when we create our own one, which we're going to do right now. So if we had to define the core steps, what we'll do, we'll add a workflow. We're going to call this fun bugs. Okay, and click on add. Okay, right. So in fact, I want to be in diagram mode for this. So what you'll see is when you start off, you just get a very simple setup with create and open. Okay. Now what we want to do is we want to have an in progress status. Okay. So I'll go create, open, in progress, and resolved, and finally closed. Okay. So that really is all there is to a workflow. Now, as you'll have seen in the one that's bundled with Jira, you also get a reopen status, but I tend not to worry too much about that. Okay, so at this point, then, what we want to do is start working on the transition. So you'll see that there's a icon here called Create Transition Straight Line. So from open to in progress. Okay. Don't know why this is quite so small, this little window. It's not working very well, is it? Okay, let's do it in text mode instead then, to give you a better idea of the two different views. Okay. So we've got the 4 steps we're going to have, and then we want to think, well, how can you get out of open? Well, first up, we need to add a transition. Okay. And the transition is going to be, let's say, begin work. Yep. Very simple. Okay, so this will then go to the in progress status. Now what we can do here is we can have a screen if we want to. Okay, now if we were going to want a comment to appear, for example, or rather a screen with a comment field to appear, we would need to go ahead and create a screen with no fields in it and give it a name. So I can show you how we would do that. We'd go into screens, add a screen, call it begin work. Okay, add. Okay, you'll notice that there's no fields. Fine. And then we'll refresh this page. Okay, we'll have to redo this bit. Begin work. Okay, destination step in progress, and the transition view would be begin work. Okay. And the consequence of that, I believe, we'll test this out later, is that there should be a field, or rather a screen that appears when you click on that Begin Work button that shows you the, essentially that shows you a blank screen except for a comment box. Okay. So, at the moment, from open, the only transition we have is Begin Work. But if you're the reporter, you might also want to be able to close the issue. You might think, oh, I closed that by accident. So I'll add in a transition, another one called Close Issue. Okay, and the destination is closed. Okay, and again, we could now reuse that Begin Work one because we've created it. That could then be reused here as a just to generate a comment box. Okay. But if we're going to do this, one thing to bear in mind is that to go from open to close, you still need a resolution. Otherwise, it will muck up your filters. So, what I would advocate quite strongly is that, in fact, you create a different screen. Okay, something that looks a little bit like this one. So, close issue. Okay, click on add. Right, okay, and then resolution. So what we're now doing is we're saying, well, you need to specify a resolution. Okay, excellent. Now what we can also do, if we go into our field configuration section, not sure exactly where we're trying to get to here, but let's have a little look. So the default field configuration, what we want to do is we want to locate the resolution field. Next. Okay, and we could potentially make it a... Okay, it's I think it's a required field because there's no optional or required elements. So I think that, but we'll have to test that in a short while. Okay, so what we'll do, we will refresh this one. Okay, and now close issue, close, and close issue, add. Okay. Cool. So now, from open, we have 2 options. You can either begin work on it, or you can close the issue. Okay, so that's really quite awesome. But what we want to do is we want to limit this, so not everyone can close the issue. We don't want it to be possible for somebody who has no interest in the ticket to be able to come along and close it. So we go into the transition. Okay, in this case, close issue. And you'll see here we have 3 basic levels: conditions, validators, and post functions. Okay, so for the sake of simplicity, we're going to focus on conditions and post functions. Okay, so add a new condition. Okay, and the condition is that only the reporter at this stage can close this issue. Okay, so we click on add. Okay. Okay, so there we go. So only the reporter of the issue can execute this transition. Now, for safety's sake, we should also add in a condition that says something like user is in group or user is in project role, and give an administrator override. Okay, this is just in case you get to a point where, for example, the reporter is away or leaves the business or whatever else. Okay. Once you add in multiple conditions, you'll see you get an AND operator. Okay, so at the moment what you're saying is only the reporter of the issue can execute the transition, and he must be an administrator, or she must be an administrator as well. We need to switch that to OR. Okay, so that's where we do that. Okay, excellent. Right, so that's what we're doing there. Okay, now what we want to do is go back to the workflow. Let's refresh the page. Okay, and hopefully we should now see a little bit of progress. Okay, excellent. So next up then, we want to think about the transitions and routes away from in progress. Okay, so I should also say that you'll be able to see it in the diagram view, the way that this is all building up as well. So you'll see that we've started to add in some transitions, begin work and close issue. Yep. Okay, excellent. Right. So that's where we stand at this point. So now in progress. Okay, so at this stage, what transitions do we want away? Okay, well we want to be able to say to somebody, okay, I can't work on this, so send it back to open. I have resolved this, so send it to resolved. Or the option of the reporter to say, actually, this is closed. Okay, so let's start. So in progress, we're going to add in a transition to send it back to open. Okay, so what we'll call this is, let's say, we'll call this return or unassign perhaps. Unassign. Okay, so this is essentially saying I can't work on it. Okay, so we'll click on open, and again we can use the begin work screen because that's one that has a comment field in it and nothing more. So click on add. Okay. Okay. Now the conditionality for unassign will be add a new condition to restrict when this transition can be performed. So again we're going to say only the current assignee. Okay, so only the person who's assigned to this issue can do this. Okay, we could also say, well, what about if we want the reporter to do it? So in that case, we would select only reporter, and once again, we would also want to switch that to OR. Okay, and once again, we would also want to have an administrator override. So administrators should essentially be able to bypass the workflow, and there's a variety of reasons you might want to do that. Even the best planned workflow can have mistakes in it. Trust me on this, okay? So be prepared for errors, okay? So what we now want to do is go back to, we've done that one, so we want to go back to our workflow. Okay, where are we looking? Okay, so it's fun bugs. Okay, so at the moment we've got a route to unassign. Okay, right. What we now need is a route to resolve it. So add transition, resolve issue. Okay, the step will be resolved, and the transition view will need to be So what we need here is we could probably use the resolve issue screen. Let's just check what that screen is. Okay, so let's have a little look through. Okay, see, so I think this is one that comes with the system. Okay, so if we have a look, okay, so we can see. Okay, so in the previous video I actually errored here because I put the satisfaction rating in the resolution field. So that's a problem, but never mind. Might remove that. You can even the best of us make mistakes from time to time. So what we'll do, for the sake of expedience, we'll remove that field. Okay, and what we'll do is we'll use this field, this screen. Okay. Actually, not sure. We might be better off creating a custom one. So let's create a custom one. So let's keep that in fact, and instead create our own bespoke one. So all we're going to do, in a nutshell, is say fun bugs resolve issue. Okay, add. Okay, right, and all we've got is resolution. Okay, simple, and that's all we need to worry about there. Okay, so it becomes fun bugs resolve issue. Right. Excellent. So we'll reload this. We need to re-enter this data, but not to worry. Let's just check that that's right. Resolve issue. Resolve issue and resolved. Okay, add. Great. Okay, so the routes away from the in progress step are now unassigned. The issue's been resolved. Okay. Did we set up the conditions for that? I think we did, didn't we? No, we didn't. Okay, so resolve issue. So the conditions here will be only the assignee can do that. We don't want the reporter to be able to resolve an issue because that they can close it anyway. Alternatively, they can assign the issue to themselves and work on it that way. Okay, or user is in the project role, administrators. Okay, now bear in mind this is just a very quick overview, so you need to test out your workflow. I can't emphasize that enough. Test your workflow. Okay, test your workflow. Very important. Okay, before you just sign it off. Okay. Just to make sure there's no potential room for errors. Okay, so from in progress we also want it to be able to go to closed, so click on add transition. Okay, close issue. Okay, closed, and the transition will be close issue. Okay, which we set up previously. Right. Okay, now what we could do here, in fact, is we could use this one. We already created a transition here, which is, if you saw the ID, number 21. So in fact, that's what we're going to do. I'm going to click on delete transitions. I'll get rid of the close issue one. Okay, and what we're going to do instead, not sure exactly how you do this in text mode, but I can show you in diagram mode. Okay, what we're going to do is create. Let's see if I can show you this. So what we want to do is from in progress to closed. Okay. So what we're going to do, we're going to create an arrow here, in progress to closed, and then we're going to use a common transition. Okay, number 21. If we clone the transition, it's creating a copy that we can then bespoke. But if we use a common transition, then it's a shared one. Okay. So it's now using the same one. So if we switch back into text mode, okay, you'll see we now have 3 routes out of in progress. Excellent. So next up, we want to think, well, what are the routes away from resolved? Well, essentially what we want people to say is whether they're happy with the answer or whether they're unhappy with the answer. Okay, did we set up the permissions for this before I get ahead of myself? Yep, we did, because it's shared. Right, fine. Right, okay. So what we want here is we want the option of saying, essentially, well, there's 2 essential options. We want to be able to say something like work complete. Okay, and that would go to closed and close issue. Okay, and that would then, let's see, the conditions there would be something like only the reporter can do that. Okay, or user is in group, or user is in group administrators, for example. Okay, and this just gives you a bit of a way out of any workflow nightmares you might inadvertently create for yourself. Okay. Right, so we'll switch that to or, again, very important. Okay, and then what you'll see, oh, where are we? We've got to get back into that. Right, okay, so edit. Okay, so work complete, and that will send it to closed. Okay, okay, so we could also have further work needed, or decline resolution, you might prefer to call it. Okay, so that would go back to in progress, or back to open potentially, depending on how you want to set it up. We'll send it back to open. And in this case, remember the begin work screen just has a comment field, so we'd want people to put a comment in at that stage, so we'll add that in. Okay, now the further work needed conditions will be, okay, that only the reporter can execute that, okay. We could also put in a condition for administrators as well, which I will do for the sake of completeness, okay. So user is in project role, okay, administrators, right. Cool. Switch to OR, okay. Now, let's see. So if I reload this page now, fine. So work complete, it goes to closed, further work needed, and it goes back to open. Okay. Finally, the closed step. Right. Well, what we want to do here, did I set up the conditions for these two? Short-term memory, I don't know. Right. Yeah, we did, and we did. Fine. So closed. So what we want to do is we want to say, well, what if I want to reopen the issue? So reopen issue. Okay, sends it to open, and we use the comments screen begin work to set that up. Right, so they're the conditions, but now we want to think about what the post functions are. Okay, so let's see, the post functions. How am I going to demonstrate this? Okay, what you might recall is in a previous video I set up something called request update in the system settings. Okay, let's see if I've got an example here. Okay, so I created an event called request update. Yep. Okay, so you'll see request update, and this is then configured with the fun bugs notification scheme. So when that event is fired, the group testers will get notified. Okay, very simple. Right, so what we now want to do is we want to add in a request update button, okay, which we're going to do. So we want a transition from, let's say, in progress. Okay, so in progress, request update. Okay, the destination step will remain the same. It's still going to be in progress. And what we're going to do potentially is allow for them to add a comment in as well. In fact, no, because that will confuse it. So request update very simply will simply be a button that they can press to get an update. Okay, so we click on add. Right. Who can click on the request update button? Well, it's very simple. The reporter. The reporter can say, I'd like an update. You could also add in user is in group, management team, or user is project manager, or user is administrator, but we'll stick with only the reporter can do that. Okay. And then what we need to do is a post function. So this is after you hit the button, what happens. Okay. In this case, we're going to click on add a new post function. Okay, and the result is that let's see, the what do we want? We want to fire an event. I wonder where the field is for that. Is there anything related to it? Let's have a little look through. So what we want to do is fire an event. Trigger a webhook. Let me just have a little check through. So set parent field, transition parent issue. Let me pause for a moment and come back to you. So I've had a look through, and what I believe is that in fact what we need to do is go back a step, and here where it says fire a generic event we need to click on edit. Okay, so instead of the generic event, the event we want to fire is the request update event. Okay, so with this what we should now have is when the request update button is pressed, and it's only possible for the reporter to do that, the post function will be that the request update event is fired, and that will then send a notification through to the notification scheme. So let's just check that we've got this all properly configured. Notifications, I think. Let's have a little look. Okay, request update. Okay, Now, the bit that I'm also interested in is where we actually, so I think it's when you add a notification you can determine, yeah, so that determines the, no, not sure, I don't know. Yeah, but like I said before, this is a very typical scenario in Jira where you're looking puzzled and you have to sort of work through and figure out exactly what you're going to do. However, once that's oh, I think what it might be under the events. So let's have a little. There we go, view events. So if we edit it, there we go. Okay. So what you'll see here is when you create an event, you then determine the template the email template that gets sent out. So in this case, we're using the issue updated email template, and that then means that so from the start, essentially, oh, where are we looking at? In the workflow, let's run through this from start to finish, right? So in the workflow, when it's active, you will see, okay, so someone clicks on request update, that then fires the event that we defined, okay. The event then is configured to send out a, if you recall what we just looked at, the event will send out a issue updated email template. So issue updated, yep, and it's using the default notification scheme and the fun bugs notification scheme, right? So the fun bugs notification scheme is related to the fun bugs project. Okay, so we click on that. We then scroll down. Request update. So when the request update event is fired, it will send out an issue updated email to everyone in the group testers. Okay? You with me? Hopefully you're with me. Right. Cool, cool, cool. So that's really all there is to that. And really, that's a very basic workflow that we've set up. Now, there's plenty of stumbling blocks here that we would probably want to go through and address. So, for example, when you close an issue, okay, when you close an issue, what you'd want to do is you'd want to set the reporter as the assignee. So you would then say assign to, I wonder if we've got assign to reporter. Assign to reporter, there we go. So that would then mean that the issue goes back to the original reporter, okay? And that would then make sure that the issue was actually properly closed off. We do the same thing with the work complete transition also. So add a post function and assign to reporter. Okay, you might decide assign to current assignee or what have you. Okay, right. When you resolve an issue as well, you might decide that you want to change the assignee. Now there is a potential stumbling block here. You might say, I want, when it's resolved, for it to go back to the reporter, so the reporter can then decide if they're happy or not. But the problem that you have is there is no, currently at least, there is no last assignee value. So what that means is once it's gone to this transition and been assigned back to the reporter, what that means is you can't then reassign it back to the previous person working on it, as far as I'm aware. Hence why we've set it to go to the open status, not back to in progress and assigned to the same person. Okay. So let's actually zip through and do this. So for resolve issue, we will have it assigned to the reporter. Okay, add. Okay, right. We will also, let's see. So work complete. Further work needed. What we need to do when further work is needed, we actually need to unassign the issue. So then, I'm not sure if we've got this. Oh. Oh, there is assigned to last role member. Oh, this is a new feature. I didn't know this. Well, in that case, that makes it very easy. To the last from this that had the issue assigned before. Perfect. Okay, so you'd select that one then. Oh well, excellent. That's in proving how great they are there. Project role administrators. What does that mean? So the project role to check. users, include reporter. I'm not sure exactly how this works fully, but let's see how we could do that. So let's try that again. So assign to last role member. So the last user from the specified role that had this issue assigned before. Okay, so I think, bear in mind this is brand new to me, but I think we'd want it to be project role users because everyone should belong in that group. Include the reporter. It could be skip skip if the user selected an assignee in the transition screen. Okay, so I'd want to do that. Depends if we've defined that in this defined the assignee field in the transition screen. So we'll just select those two for the time being. Okay, click on add. Okay, so there we go. Right, okay, so that could in fact go back to in progress. That's an excellent innovation they've made there. Really cool. Anyhow, so what we also want to look at is reopen issue. So reopen issue, we would want to clear the assignee. So add a post function. And I'm not sure if there, like I was about to say, I'm not sure if there is, let's try update issue field. I'm not sure if this is going to work, but there we go. Issue field, assignee, field value unassigned. There we go. So click on add. Okay. So what this should then, in theory, do is allow us to have a basic working workflow. Now there will, because I've done this on the fly and in a rush, it's quite likely that there'll be some problems with this workflow. Like I said, it's very important to test your workflows. Never assume they're going to work because users find ingenious ways around workflows. So things like they'll assign to users directly, which will bypass some of your controls. There's all kinds of ways around it. And as an administrator, you've got to recognize that they'll find ways around it and build in routes to counteract any problems, such as issues that are closed but not resolved, for example, which was a problem that I experienced. Okay. Um, However, for the time being, what we're going to do, we're going to assume that this is perfect, although it's not. And what we're going to do is we're going to associate it to a project. Now, in order to associate it to a project, we need to create a workflow scheme first. Okay. So you'll remember from previous videos that the issue type scheme, the screen schemes, the field configuration schemes, all had to be associated to a or they all had to be set up in order to be associated to a project, and it's no different here. So what we want to do is add a workflow scheme. We'll call this one Fun Bugs. I think. I wonder how the default one's working. Might have to investigate that. Right. Let's have a little look at this project before we go any further and make sure that this is not another case of a great update that I've missed workflow. Oh no, it's using the default workflow scheme. Okay, so what we need to do, in fact, is modify this. So add workflow, and the workflow is fun bugs. We click on next. Okay. The issue types, we might as well have all of those. Bear in mind, there'll still be individual restrictions. We certainly don't want that. We don't want that. We don't want that one. We don't want that one. Actually, we do want that one, don't we? Task. There we go. We don't. It'll do. It'll do. Okay. So we click on finish. Okay. And what we're going to then do, so now we've created this, we're going to go into a project administration area, and we will update this to switch scheme. Okay, fun bugs and associate. Okay, so what you'll see then is that there's essentially a migration issue. So from reopened, it would become open, for example, because it was using the default one, which has a reopen status, which we don't have. So we'll associate that. Okay, that's now done. Okay, and now if we go and locate an issue such as FB1, Okay, you will see that the buttons we defined are now there. So bear in mind we're the assignee and reporter, and we're an administrator as well, so we should see all the options. Okay, so from open we can click on begin work. We're then asked to put a comment in, okay, but we don't have to. Begin work. So now it's in progress. If we unassign it, it goes back to, guess what, it goes back to open. Begin work again, begin work. Okay, resolve issue. Okay, so we select a resolution. Okay, so we'll go with fixed, resolve issue. Okay, then as the reporter, or also as an administrator, we could go work complete, e.g. close, or further work needed, so we'll do further work needed. Okay, so it's gone back to open, but let's assume that all is well and close the issue as we have done there. Now what I did notice there was that the resolution did not go from fixed to not resolved. Okay, so that's a very interesting, this is the classic sort of case of testing your workflow through. Okay, so what we're actually going to do, now we've created this workflow, we're going to edit it. Okay, so what we do, we click on edit. Okay, because it's now an active workflow, you'll see it's created a draft. Okay, we can publish the draft rather than having to copy the workflow, which we had to do in previous versions of Jira. Okay, and what we want to do is we want to take the let's see, the reopen issue, the further work needed transition and the reopen issue transition, and as a post function we want to clear the resolved field. So I think we were looking at update issue field, and that becomes resolution becomes none. Okay, so add that in, and we do this again here. So add resolution, blah blah blah. Okay, and resolution. Where are we going? None. Okay, add. And in a nutshell, now that should mean once we publish this draft, which we'll do. Do I want to create a backup? No, but you may want to. Up to you. It's now active again, and what we're going to do is we're going to test this out. So reopen the issue. The resolution is currently at fixed. Okay, reopen issue, and it's unresolved, so it worked. Okay, and yeah, that is your very rapid introduction to workflows. What else to say? I hope you very much enjoyed these tutorial series. I've enjoyed presenting them. Yeah, if you need any additional help, there are, like I said at the start, a lot of resources available from Atlassian. Don't be afraid to ask questions on the Answers website. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, and best wishes to you. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.